So a bunch of new Macs just dropped. And on the outside, they look exactly the same, but on the inside, they have Apple-made silicon with the promise of better battery life and performance. But wait, that sounds really familiar. Like Microsoft did that literally last year. So why is this so special? Same idea, different execution. Welcome to the first episode of Execution Matters. And today, we're breaking down how Apple's execution helps them not only just to dump Intel, but to crush the competition in the meantime. Last year, Microsoft announced the Surface Pro X, the first Surface device to use ARM chips instead of Intel, which is really important because you can get a thinner device that performs just as well with better battery life. Fast forward to last week, Apple made a very similar sounding announcement with an M1 chip in 3 of their devices instead of an Intel chip, so they can have better battery life and better performance. So why the lukewarm response to the Surface Pro X? Like even to this day, the reviews are kind of like, yeah, it's kind of there, but not really. But yet with the Apple Silicon Macs, they've been pretty much praised all around, even though it's a first generation product. The first reason is that everything just works. That's an Apple cliche, but it's really true, especially in this case. Yeah, it's a first generation product, but that doesn't mean that this Mac has to have special treatment from you so that it can work properly. Instead, it can pretty much do everything that your old Mac can do, but better. They went the extra mile to ensure that all the work that you used to love to do on your old Mac, you'll love even more on your new Mac. It's not really a surprise to anybody that the automatic expectation is that when you buy a new computer, you should be able to do everything that your old computer was able to do. I want to emphasize how much work went into pulling that off on Apple's end though, because you have a new chipset, which means that you can't use any of the old apps from before if you just have the new chipset. So Apple wrote special software so that you can use the old apps on your old Mac onto your new Mac, and you don't have to wait for developers to update their apps, although they will run a little slower, but you don't have to wait for them to update for them to work. And that's something that is really, really big, because you can't run basically anything on the Surface Pro X to this day. The number one complaint to this day about the Surface Pro X is that you can't run the apps that you want on it. And that sounds really bad because if you don't live inside a web browser, you can't rely on a device like that or just cross your fingers and hope that the developer will update it for you because there's no guarantee that they'll do that. Number two, it's not a pilot program. So when Microsoft first released their Surface Pro X, they released it alongside their Surface Pro 7, an Intel-based system. So the one that can run all your apps, and they had a very shiny and very sleek-looking device that can't run any apps. And it's really just a shiny concept device that's like, oh hey, this is what we want to make in the future. It's not really ready yet, but hey, here you go. And it's like you're paying to be a beta tester because no one has made any apps for this device yet, while for a lower price, you can buy the one that is actually able to do the work that you want to do. And it was a very confusing position for Microsoft to put themselves in. They pretty much just wrote off their shiny new device as a serious productivity tool. On the other hand, here's what Apple did. If you look on apple.com right now, if you look under the MacBook Air, you'll notice that you can't buy an Intel-based MacBook Air anymore. Like, they don't sell them. They only sell Apple Silicon MacBook Airs. Now, what does that say to you? That is a very, very confident gamble that Apple has made right there, that, hey, our Apple Silicon is so good, we're not even gonna sell you Intel-based MacBook Airs. Apple is making their message super, super clear. This is not an experiment. You are not paying to be a beta tester. And honestly, I don't think you can say the same for the people that bought the Surface Pro X. Number three, the future feels tangible. Apple, earlier this year, announced their Apple Silicon Macs. Not officially, but they announced that they were coming. And so now we first saw them for the first time. And at that first event, they said that 2 years out, we envision that all of our Macs will have Apple Silicon. So to put that into perspective, by this time in 2022, we should have a Apple Silicon iMac an Apple Silicon MacBook Pro 16-inch, and potentially, if we're really, really lucky, a Mac Pro with Apple Silicon. That sounds amazing. So how is Microsoft handling it? Well, to kind of highlight their lineup, they have a Surface Go laptop, a Surface Book, and also the Surface laptop, as well as the Surface Studio. Now, the Surface Pro X is probably not replacing any of these devices. Maybe the Surface, the regular Surface, but that's a bit of a stretch. If I am, say, a Surface Studio owner, I have no clue when I'm ever going to get a Microsoft ARM version of that. Now granted, the 2-year window that Apple gave us is pretty vague. It could be more like 3 years, hopefully not 4 years. But I think that just even that 2-year window, it makes it a lot more tangible because of how well they were able to execute it right out of the gate on day 0 the first time, that I have a lot of confidence in 2 years' time that we'll get really, really good, powerful machines that are even more powerful than the Apple Silicon devices that we have right now. Number 4, the price is right. The Surface Pro X starts at $999, but it really starts at $1,300 once you add all the things that you really need to make it a laptop tablet convertible. While the MacBook Air is only a laptop and also starts at $999, it just does more. It just does. It's not only just a capable machine, but it's a very capable video editing machine. And that's something that you don't get with the Surface Pro X. If the barrier to entry to get into both of these ecosystems are the same, the MacBook Pro really wins out because of its superior ecosystem. Not talking about just the Apple ecosystem between your iPhone and your iPad and your Mac, but more talking about the app ecosystem, which is much more mature, especially if you have specialized creative tasks or just specialized tasks in general that you want to get done. That's something that can be really, really exemplified with the power of Apple Silicon. And it's something you don't get for something that just kind of seems that it just exists, like with the Surface Pro X, if that makes any sense. I should mention that $999 isn't even the lowest barrier to entry to get into Apple Silicon. It's actually $699. And when you compare that to the Surface Pro X, that's almost half the price. And that's pretty dang good, isn't it? And lastly, number 5, there is hope for power users. This one's really important for people especially like me. Now, I do a lot with my 2019 MacBook Pro 13-inch with Touch Bar. I do everything from CAD modeling, video editing, writing these scripts, doing all my classwork. I do a lot of stuff on this machine, and I was very pleased to see that at the event, they were able to showcase all of that on the base model MacBook Air. I am really excited to upgrade to Apple Silicon in the coming years because of what I saw on stage. The Surface Pro X definitely looks great from a creative perspective because it looks like a do-it-all device. It can be a drawing tablet, it could be a note-taking device, it can be so many things that it says that it can do, but if I don't have the right apps to run on it, then it's just a shiny screen with a pen. Like, that's it. And the thing that really makes it come alive is the app ecosystem. And that's something that I really believe strongly that Apple gets right in this case. So here are some lessons that we can learn from Apple's execution. Consider the cost of not only just switching, but the opportunity cost as well. Time is money. The more time that people have to spend on figuring out how to do what they used to do on the new machine, the less happy they'll be with their purchase decision. Also, normal people don't have time to wait for developers to update their favorite app so it can work on their new computer. Make your product a lot better. If Apple Silicon was only a marginal improvement over the Intel chips, then I don't think anybody would be really excited about it. It's something that we really should also keep in mind when considering when you make a product. Do you want to just be only 10% better than your competitors and have the possibility that your competitors would just leapfrog you in like 3 months? Or do you want to be 600 times better than your competitors? And that puts you in a spot that it becomes really hard for them to touch you. Something to consider. Be crystal clear about your future roadmap. You might make a product today that's for a super niche audience, but of course, you want to branch out, and that's something you should absolutely make transparent so that people that know about your product now and it doesn't necessarily fit them personally, they don't write you off in the future as, oh, they're not gonna pay attention to me, because you have the future roadmap and they can look and see, hey, I'm gonna be waiting for the 16-inch Apple Silicon Macs that are coming within a year. You wanna have that level of anticipation with whatever product or service that you have. And lastly, being first doesn't matter in the long run. Wait until it's ready, within reason. Having a first mover advantage is definitely an advantage in some cases, but if you don't get it right, then it can lead to negative brand reception right out of the gate. And that's exactly what we saw with the Surface Pro X. Something that I wouldn't recommend to anybody because of how woefully unequipped it is from a software perspective. But something like Apple Silicon, where it not only exceeded my expectations, but something that I would personally buy for myself, that's how you know that you've waited the proper amount of time, but you didn't sit on what you had for too long. It's a fine art that honestly I haven't really mastered yet either. So what do you guys think? This was a little bit of a nerdy video. I hope that you understood why I think this is important, because I think that having the idea is not a lot of the work. A lot of the work is done in the execution, especially when you're designing a new product. So are there any lessons that you learned from this? Drop it down in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. This is the first episode, I hope, of many of things like this, where I break down what companies have done in the past and how they flopped, where other companies tried the same idea and they succeeded. Let me know if this format works. All right, see you guys.
Oh, you're so quiet now. Look, I'm a machine. I'm proud of it. That's my fan. Longer battery life. Plug it in. Where are you going? Just plug it in. Fast. I'm fast. I'm still fast. Check it out. Still got it. PC. Still got it. I've always been there. I always will be. Fast. Okay. My battery's drained. I gotta go plug in. Good luck.